Recently, the Chinese Academy of Fiscal Sciences issued a report stating that by the year of 2025, the Chinese government's deficit will reach 10 trillion yuan or $1.5 trillion US. The next few years will be tougher for China's already crippled economy. Today, we'll dive deeper in one aspect of China's economy, the old real estate market of China. In our last episode, we talked about how China's real estate giant, the Evergrande Group, is in serious trouble and possibly becoming a great rhino event for China soon. In this episode, we will have a look at how the Evergrande Group became so big and bloated and how it reflects the Chinese government's economic policy. You will see why the housing bubble is so dangerously huge in China. Spoiler alert, it is closely related to the Chinese government's planned economy policy. Welcome to Beyond the News, I'm Faye. Let's first talk about how the Evergrande Group started back in the 1990s. To understand this, we first need to talk about the changes of China's real estate market. Surprise or not, there wasn't any real estate market in China before the 1990s. Back then, people's properties were distributed by the state-owned enterprises they work for. There were also no private companies at that time. The situation only started to change in 1994, when the government started to allow people to have their own property. By 1998, the government had stopped the policy of housing distribution. People could have as many properties as they wanted. This was when the Chinese real estate market really took off. So technically, the market for real estate in communist China only existed for 20 years. So this is the initial environment the Evergrande Group was started with. The Evergrande Group made their first bucket of gold in Guangzhou, a south capital city of China. Back in 1997, there was 11 hectares of land the Guangzhou city government was selling, but no developer wanted to buy. Because the land was located in an industrial area and there wasn't much infrastructure nearby. The founder of the Evergrande Group, Xu Jiaying, saw this as an opportunity. However, he doesn't have the funds to buy the land. So what did he do? He arranged a contract with the city government. Instead of paying the full price up front, Evergrande would pay in several installments, and the first installment would be 5 million yuan. Since no other developer wanted the land, the city government made a deal with Xu. Xu then used the deal and borrowed 6 million yuan from a bank. 5 million was used for the first installment, and the remaining 1 million was used for the company's operation. This project later turns out to be one of Guangzhou's successful star projects. The Evergrande made 80 million profits out of it. This 80 million set the foundation for Evergrande's future endeavor. Now in this story, there are three aspects we would look at. First, Evergrande's founder Xu is no doubt a talented entrepreneur. He was able to see opportunities where others could not see, and also able to arrange an ambitious deal with the government and also the banks. Secondly, the government's policy change played a big part in Xu's success as well. The government had just unleashed the real estate market to the general public, and Xu entered the market right at its infancy. So opportunity was waiting there for him. Thirdly, Xu's business started by using debts to finance his company's operation. This foreshadows his downfall in the future. The second key event for the Evergrande came in 2008. After the 2008 global financial crisis, the Chinese real estate market also took a huge hit. To offset that, the Chinese government introduced a 4 trillion yuan stimulus package to keep the Chinese economy going. These 4 trillion yuan were going to 10 different industries, and the real estate got a big cut of it. Other policies included losing banks' credit policy, letting real estate companies borrow money more easily and allowing people to get mortgages a bit more easily. With the trillion yuan pouring into the housing market, the housing price starts to fly up high fast. You can see, because there are so many opportunities in the real estate market, in order to get a bigger share of the market, the company will have to handle more simultaneous projects. To handle so many projects at the same time, of course, you would need to have more and more cash to run the projects. What happens if you don't have the needed money at hand? You guess it. You would borrow from the banks or other financial institutions. Clearly, Evergrande is a really good borrower and has been growing. By 2016, the Evergrande Group was considered one of the world's top 500 companies, and in 2018, it was ranked by Fortune magazine as the world's most profitable real estate company. However, 2018 is also the last good year for Evergrande. In the same year, the Chinese government introduced a number of new regulations for the real estate market. This was a starting point when the Evergrande started to go downhill. From Evergrande's operation method of borrowing money to grab more market share, we can see that the company is heavily reliant on people's property buying. If people aren't buying, Evergrande won't have the cash to pay back the debt they borrowed. Therefore, this model would work really well when the real estate market is booming. But when the economy slows down, people don't have the purchasing power to buy properties, the humongous debt would become a huge burden for Evergrande. In 2020, the debt problem finally hit Evergrande hard. It was not because the debts were due, but because of changes in government policy. So last year, the Chinese government announced a new regulation known as the 3 red lines. These red lines were essentially telling the real estate companies that lower your debts or we are not going to lend you any money. But unfortunately, for Evergrande, its business model is based on debts, which made them a big target under the new policy. So to summarize it, the fast growth of the Evergrande Group in the past 20 years was closely linked to the Chinese government's policies. The company started back in the late 90s when the government was just unleashing the iron claws on the real estate market. In 2008, when the government was investing a lot in the housing market, Evergrande was able to use debts to gain more and more market shares and become a giant in the industry. However, this empire was built on debts. Therefore, it is like a skyscraper built on top of sand, so it is destined to fall. In 2017, when the government started to lay out more regulations on the market, it became harder for Evergrande to borrow money, causing its debts to get bigger and bigger, which resulted in the company's inevitable decline. Evergrande is just one example to show that the Chinese government's policies are closely linked to China's economy. Let's dive a bit deeper. How does the Chinese government policy affect the real estate market, and especially the pricing? Before 2009, China's housing price was relatively stable. But from 2009, China's housing prices really started to skyrocket, and the trend lasted about a decade. The 4 trillion yuan stimulus package was one of the main reasons. With so much money pouring into the real estate industry, it caused property prices to skyrocket directly. The other driving force was from the Chinese people. You know that Chinese people love buying properties everywhere around the world. There are cultural and investment aspects. Because in China, many Chinese people saw real estate as a good investment opportunity and possibly the only safe investment option in China. Let me explain. Since the 2008 global financial crisis, the manufacturing industry in China has been in decline. We can see from China's industrial production index. Since 2010, it has been going down. Therefore, more and more investors would try to find other forms of investment. Why not the stock market, you may be asking? Well, the Chinese stock market just had a crash in 2007, so people were not too keen to invest in the stock. Hence, the real estate market seems like the only good investment alternative for Chinese people. You can see that as the government's stimulus pumping into building houses and people starting investing in buying houses, 2 things working hand in hand drove up the housing price in China. As the housing price gets higher and higher, people's expectation for the housing market grows higher and higher, and thus more people would want to invest in it. And of course, the local city officials were more than happy to sell land, and the developers were more than happy to build more. The whole housing market went into a vicious mad cycle. In the end, the real estate market had hijacked most of the Chinese people's private money and a big portion of the government's printed money, resulting in an economy highly dependent on real estate. Another wonderful world created, that is, the Chinese real estate industry. Now, as the bubble growing bigger and bigger, we need to see two negative consequences from this crazy growth in the real estate market in China. First, it impacts the regional areas in China. As more and more real estate projects are busy polluting the already badly polluted China, it also requires a lot more workers to the construction industry. These work opportunities drew a lot of farmers into the city, as farming is always a low-income hard laboring job in China. According to the statistics, since 2017, more than 50% of construction workers were farmers from regional areas of China. This causes a huge problem in regional China. If we think about it, the working-age population left their villages to find work in the city. Who are the ones left behind? The very young kids and the quite old elderly. This causes two problems. No one is looking after the elderly people or the young kids. Secondly, no one is farming the land. That is why China's food shortages are becoming worse and worse, and on top of the more frequent drought and flooding disasters seen in China in recent years, China is facing serious challenges in many regards. And the second negative consequence is that the housing market became fictitious and it is cancelling out the real economy. We all understand that for people to invest in real estate, the way they make money is to buy it when the price is low, then sell it at a higher price. However, there were no values and productivities added during such a transaction. It is not like when you buy a new table, the table has to be made, but reselling a same property does not add any physical value to the market. This would decrease productivity for the economy and make more opportunists. In the long run, businesses that have productivity like manufacturing and construction are taking a smaller role in the economy. But the fictitious economy is becoming more and more dominant. To summarize, the Chinese government's planned economy policy has a huge impact on China's real estate market. Evergrande is a clear example of that, and the company's debt is due to the Chinese government's change in policy. If the government still lets them to borrow money, Evergrande can keep thriving. Second, is a lot of China's booming economy is because of the bubble in various industries, and the property market is just one example. Underneath it all, China's economy will face a big problem in the long run. What do you think about this issue? Leave me a comment below. Alright, that's all for today. If you like today's program, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell. Thank you for watching Beyond the News. I'm Faye. I'll see you again very soon.